Okay, so no reInvent for me would be complete without meeting up with Ben Kehoe. Hey, Ben, how you going?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Now, I think the last time we met, particularly face to face at reInvent that I can recall, we were eating ice cream. Um, I don't know if you
Reasonable.
remember that, but we were. It's a little bit too early in the morning for me for ice cream, so I've regressed back to tea. And I'm drinking tea. I noticed before, yes, I thought I saw before I clicked record that you were doing something over at the tea station. What are you drinking? What are you drinking at the moment? Can I ask?
I am drinking a uh, decaf chai from Stash Tea
Very
that
nice.
just arrived today. So I'm excited to try it out for the first time.
Excellent. Okay. Well, maybe towards the end of this video, you can tell us. You can give us a quick,
Yeah, I'll give a
a quick
review.
review. I'm drinking my my favorite, my Madura Premium Blend. It's kind of that. It's a local tea. It's made. It is in the next state, but we're so close to the next state here that it's sort of it's got a little plantation down there. But yes, that's the one I build. I drink most of the time. It's just a normal black tea. But
Although it looks like
excellent.
you've got things in it.
It looks like what? Sorry.
There's some milk maybe in there.
There is. Look, and this is a little. I find this a little controversial because it's almond milk,
Okay.
not normal kind of cow milk stuff. And yeah, I don't know how I would have felt about this last year, but that's what I'm drinking at the moment because it's kind of what I'm liking at the moment. So I don't know.
I'm a straight tea drinker all the time. I never put the milk or sugar in it. So I'm
Yeah, okay,
unwise to the ways of. I will drink a chai latte from a coffee shop,
sure.
but I wouldn't make it myself.
Yeah, yeah.
Just seems like too much work.
No, well, that's a complicated tea. That's got to be made properly kind of tea. But when I very first started drinking tea, I had way too much milk and sugar. I mean, this is like when I was this high. Um, but um, but yeah, I have gone completely the other way to be completely milkless, completely sugarless. But yeah, nowadays just a splash, as people will know, just a splash of almond milk. Almond milk. I'm trying to say it properly. Apparently, I have
According to
lived.
who?
Well, that's a good question. My entire life, I've been raised saying almond with saying the L, but now people are, especially here in Australia, people are like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's like, really? It doesn't sound that far off to me. Anyhow, anyhow,
Yes.
how's your reInvent? I want to ask you because you are
Yeah.
fairly well versed in a reInvent. So how is your reInvent this time around?
I am attending significantly more sessions. I
Right.
generally make it to about one session that I'm not in at a
Okay.
given reInvent. And this time around, I've seen a few,
Right.
which has been good. I've been missing more than I put them on my calendar and then I can't make it. Um, but it's nice to be able to see them, to know that everything is going to be viewable afterwards. Um, I think being the first virtual reInvent, I think there's the number of hiccups, let's say, in the delivery of a virtual conference, I think has been pretty good. I've had streaming issues maybe on one video that I saw that sounded like some other people were having too, but other than that, it's been pretty smooth.
Okay.
Um,
Matt, there's so much to unpack from what you've just said. There's so much detail in there. So, and the one thing I want to come back to is the fact that you just said for the first streaming reInvent. So, assuming that there's going to be more, maybe more a bit like
well,
this.
I think of it more as often when AWS tries something for the first time, it often leaves a lot to be desired. I don't know if you were there the first year that they moved from one casino to multiple casinos, but it
Right.
was it was pretty much a catastrophe because it was, they learned that, oh, you need to sort of have sessions that are related at the same casinos and have repeats spread across the casinos, and you need to do better on the shuttles and all these things. And so AWS is very good at learning after the first time they try something.
For sure.
But I think there's also, being the first time that AWS is doing a virtual conference, there are definitely significant shortcomings that are also
Right. Yeah.
evident in the conference.
And as much as it sounds like a cliche, it genuinely is true that they are customer obsessed, and it's not just a throwaway marketing term. It to my understanding anyway, it is actually how the company operates, as in
Yeah.
it does things because customers say they want them. I must admit, when I first started working in the AWS sphere, I was happy to think, yeah, everybody says they're customer focused. But the more I talk to people who actually work in there, I was talking to someone the other day about how does AWS map out its like 4-year plan, and they're basically saying, well, we don't have one. AWS doesn't have one. It works from this notion of if customers ask for it, and if enough customers ask for it, they do that, and then they move on to the next thing. Which has its ups and downs, right? It has its there are good things about that, and there are bad things about that. But I'm absolutely certain that they are receiving a lot of feedback about reInvent this year. There are some things that aren't working awesomely, and they are taking that feedback and they'll roll it into a better experience next year.
Well, I think my biggest concern, I do think virtual events that they do in the future will be better for sure. I think the biggest worry that I have is that AWS is very data driven as well. And that if they don't have the right metrics to understand how it's not working, that there can be metrics that show success that do not demonstrate, right? You can't understand what you're not measuring well, right? And so to take an example of this, and I think probably the thing that I'm most frustrated with, most unhappy with at this reInvent is the chat, right? That the reason to go to reInvent is to learn as a community, right? We learn better when we learn together. And so conversations like this are important, right? I have yet to have a conversation at reInvent this year with someone that I don't know already.
Mm-hmm.
And they're providing, mechanisms through the videos to chat one-on-one with somebody from AWS. And they're providing a mechanism to chat one-on-one with other attendees, but only if you find them by name, right? I searched for Mike Chambers and I found you, and then I add you, and then I can talk to you through that chat. But I can't find out the other attendees of a session that I'm at, right? And in particular, during the Q&A, right, that you can have with the moderators, whether that's the speaker of the session or not, what you can't do is learn from an insightful question that someone else asks.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? You can't meet somebody while standing in the line and have a fun or interesting or creative conversation that leaves you coming away with a new friend, a new, potential colleague, a new, just someone who's given you new ideas, right? And that part, while, the whole virtual and free thing opens up the attendance to many people who it wasn't accessible to before, none of those people are getting the community aspect that reInvent, that's the most important part of reInvent. Now, of course, online discussions, right, are, need to be well moderated, right? There's, it's non-trivial to do these things, but of the things that I think provide value at reInvent, the actual content delivery itself, right, is something that most of the, in previous years, most of the sessions end up on YouTube. And the purpose of having specific times for sessions, right? During a given week that sessions come out, there are 3 of them, and then they become on demand at the end of the week. The good reason to have those actually at scheduled times is so that there are other people there, other customers there that you can interact with and have conversations with.
Yeah.
And so I feel, that's the thing that I'm really hurting for as a customer of saying, I don't feel like I'm at reInvent because I have to go to Twitter where it's all people that, mostly I know, or a Discord server that's been set up by James Governor and Aunt Stanley and such. And go meet people and talk with people and interact in interesting ways there. But it's not, The scale of it is small because it's only the people who know the people who are already in there, kind of a thing.
Mm.
Not that it's trying to keep people out, it's just that for the
Sure.
60,000 people
Yeah.
or more, they're not learning about it.
Yeah,
They don't hear about
absolutely.
it.
I wonder how much this was thought about internally within AWS, and whether they came to that realization that this was a scale problem that they didn't want to fail at, so they basically
Yep.
did what they're doing. I mean, it seems to me, you're right, that the presentations, the sessions are on at a particular time because of the interaction that they wanted to have. So obviously, apart from the keynotes, all of these things are pre-recorded, right? We know that. No,
Yep.
that's no secret. So they're on at a certain time because they have people from AWS scheduled to be there, solution architects and the person presenting and the rest of it, to be on there in those chat sessions. Anecdotally, I'm hearing that those chat sessions aren't as popular as, I don't know whether maybe it's as they thought they were going to be, but they're not being heavily used. And I'm feeling like people are reaching out to other people they already know through channels they already have. And so, yes, we're not broadening the community.
Yeah, and the chat experience, it's not like going on Twitch, right? Where
Sure.
you're streaming with a bunch of people and there's a big chat and everyone's excited and the excitement builds, right?
Yeah.
There's a social aspect to it that makes you want to participate. And when you can chat one-on-one, sort of you say, ask a question and you get assigned a person, right? And it's, cynically, and this isn't, I don't mean this, but it's, you're talking to the people who are trying to sell you the stuff,
Sure.
right? And that's not how solutions architects or developer advocates, operate or whatever, but just sort of, the notion of it is it's a different conversation than you're going to have with a fellow customer.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the war stories, the conversation you're going to have is absolutely, it works, and absolutely it's easy. Like the war story is, well, actually it takes 3 days to figure it out, but it's still, it works.
Yeah. Or I tried it, it didn't work for me. Or, here's this little thing that, having done it, you're going to want to know about. And the multi-user conversation that then says, someone else chimes in and says, oh, have you thought about doing it this way, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And then the people observing who are just learning from the conversation of the people who are happening, right?
Yeah. No, we
sometimes you
need to solve this.
Yeah, you go up to the Q&A after a reInvent session in person, and you can stand around and just listen to the conversations that are happening and learn from that.
Yes.
Right. Even if you're not asking the questions.
Yeah, it's almost for me, especially for me, and for, because I'm in a completely different time zone here. And so that's the other side to this, is that, yes, we get repeat sessions and they're on at particular times that suit my time zone. But then, the audience, Australia, from a population point of view, Australia is much smaller. Obviously, we're not, in this time zone, there are other countries, I know that, but like the audience numbers are probably quite different. And so, yeah, again, you're not having that mass of people to be able to sort of bounce ideas off. I mean, the whole thing for me is to fly to a different country and just be this. It's one big melding pot where the common denominator is AWS rather than sort of where you are in the world. And obviously it's obvious why we couldn't do that, and there are some challenges there. So we're not going to be able to solve all of those things, but I would really like to see, and maybe there's a platform thing here generally, and this goes beyond AWS, that now we're all sort of far more familiar with being at home and interacting with people over this kind of interaction. Like for people like us, we've probably done this a little bit more, but now the population as a whole of the world is sort of getting used to doing this. So maybe we need to try and find a way of tools and platforms that can help people interact in the ways that we're describing. Have you taken time off for reInvent this year, or are you? No.
And it's, I mean, normally it takes up 3 weeks of my time anyway, right? The couple of weeks before for pre-invent, and then the amount that I'm just destroyed after the week and take to recover. But it's both been that I'm more flexible, and of course, it's easy to let things slip, right? That I say, well, I can watch it later, and then I won't watch it later.
Mm.
Last year, after reInvent, for all the folks who, like my colleagues who didn't go, I actually curated a set of talks
Nice.
for a couple of different audiences, and then booked a couple of days out of their time for 8 hours a day, right, to watch sessions, because otherwise, the on-demand thing just doesn't happen in the same way, right? And I think the same is a little bit true of having an event that does take your physical presence, which is that it acts as a forcing function for things, right?
Yeah.
I'm not meeting with service teams in the way that I would normally do at reInvent, because the meetings aren't going to be any different fundamentally from a meeting that we would have in, July. But that also means, am I having a meeting that I would be having more meetings that produce more useful things with that forcing function?
Yeah.
Right. And so, it's a lot of that thing of when you're a remote worker, right, that kind of thing, or have a remote team, you need to be more deliberate about communication.
Yes.
But it also feels that there's a limit to how much deliberate action you can have, right? That there's that having, just again, like the time booked out to, whether it's for virtual reInvent or for physical reInvent, right? Like you're saying with time off, that it forces you to not do the other thing, right? Even when in theory, your rational choice says it shouldn't matter.
Yeah, look, and in terms of those discussions, in terms of those meetings, and I mean, your experience at reInvent will be quite different to some people's experience at reInvent.
Oh, yeah.
And you book time with those product teams, you sit down with them, you tell them what to fix, and then you're done. And for a lot of us going to reInvent, it's an opportunity to talk to a product team where we wouldn't necessarily have that opportunity normally, because I'm going to talk on behalf of these people. We don't necessarily have a thing to say, we need you to fix this, but we just want to connect and see what's going on and get a different insight from it. And so that's a far more ships passing, no, that's not the right term, but people passing in the corridor, or finding you on the booth and just being able to walk up and have this quick chat with you, which you could maybe do somewhat in those chats during the sessions, but you have to find a session that happens to have the right kind of person that you want to talk to. So you are missing out on that kind of thing. And to jump into to try and send an email off to a product team and say, I want to have a quick chat with you, like, well, you and 7,000 other people, so that might not happen.
Yeah, and I think one of the other interesting bits about encountering people in a hallway and such is how to create sort of larger scale, or rather just not small scale, group interactions, right? And this is a thing for distributed teams in general. If you've got an 80-person department, how do you create those interdepartmental connections that are cross-team, that you can create at a social event for the department, that are hard to create when you're putting them all in a Zoom room and breakout rooms and those kind of things. And for the AWS Heroes, they sent us these VR headsets. And so then there's a preloaded application on it, and there's a place you go. And the interesting thing that I found about that, because it was the first sort of VR experience of that kind that I've had, is that the sense of physical space is there. And so with a lot of people, you get the people who are farther away, their sound is quieter.
Yeah.
And so you do get the notion of, oh, I can have some, organic groups form up and sort of, amorphous blobs that sort of shift and change over the course of an event. But what you don't get is any of the, nonverbal cues.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's just an avatar of what they look like. And the avatars in this thing, first of all, they don't have suspenders, which I was a frustrated about. And also no full beards. Although I
No, right.
found
Okay.
that some people, because my Twitter photo doesn't have a beard, even
Right,
though
right.
at reInvent I usually have a beard.
So they know who
People,
you
I put the
were.
beard on and people were like, "Oh, I didn't realize the beard threw me." But you also couldn't, right, with VR, even if you had a camera, it would be pointing at you and you got this thing on your face.
Yeah,
So
for
it's
sure.
like
No, sure.
the face video is inaccessible. And so
Wow,
you're
that's
trading
yeah.
one facsimile of in-person interaction for a different one, which
Yeah,
I thought was
sure.
interesting.
Maybe they could have it so that you could put your Twitter photo or something, or your the avatar that you use in a Slack
Oh,
channel
sure.
that everybody knows you as. Maybe they could just have a little circle with that on it.
But I'm saying the thing, but you're lacking any of the interactivity,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The smile that is on their face, right? You know, those kind of things, or the look of skepticism when you talk about the latest, you know, uh, code terrorism, you know, horrific thing that's built, right?
Yes. No, for sure. No, for sure. And there has been a little bit of headset lending as well, which doesn't work because the avatar is still for the person who the
Oh yeah.
headset belongs to. Anyway, we won't go into that because that's a rabbit hole. But no, I hear what you're saying. There is there is a gap there. So let's talk about skepticism and everything else, and how what are the releases been like for you? So I'll preface this with last reInvent, there was somewhat of a little disappointment that that serverless as a general topic didn't get as much of an airing as people in the serverless community would have liked. There were services and things there. There were announcements there, but you kind of had to dig in to find them. Whereas things like containers were sprinkled around liberally all over the place. So with that scene set, and you can completely disagree with me, please do if you want to. How has this reInvent been from a serverless and announcement point of view?
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you said, you know, let's talk about releases. Um, First of all, I'm bad at keeping in my head all the stuff that's come out.
Fair enough.
Um, and 2019 was 5 years ago. Uh, yeah, I mean, I think certainly, I mean, I think the Lambda, you know, container support
Mhm.
and increases in the various limits. Um, I mean, it's a big headline just because Lambda and container are in the same sentence. Although I don't think people confuse containers as a packaging format with containers as an execution model and as, you know, sort of an architectural approach. And what Lambda is doing is adding containers as a packaging format without touching any of the rest of what containers mean to people.
Yeah, sure.
And that's really useful. Um, that Lambda is adding that support, right? It both allows people to use existing tooling um, for container building with Lambda. It also allows you to pin exactly what the inside of a Lambda looks like if you need to, right? If you've got, you know, you're building custom C++ code to run inside there, you can control exactly what that looks like. What you give up is the lowered level of ownership that a zip file provides, where I'm bringing just my code, and Lambda is responsible for updating the runtime, possibly if you know, not for something like Go, but for something like Python, and it's responsible for updating the operating system. And so
Yeah.
those are things that I don't want to have to do, that I'm on the hook for if it's a container. There are container technologies that allow you to rebase a container. So move it from one base layer to a new base layer with the same upper layers on top. And if Lambda added the ability to opt in to doing that, then all of a sudden, with a container image where I bring in and I say, yeah, the base of this is the, you know, AWS Lambda Python 3.9 image, they can then update that periodically to be whatever they want. And now
Okay.
I get both benefits.
Yeah.
And at that point, I would say that for sort of production use cases, containers are then the better packaging format, because you can always fall back to, I've opted into them updating it. And in general, I think the risk of it breaking every once in a while is worth the time saved, both in actual time spent, but also just in focus on not having to update those underlying things, right? Um, but if it does happen, then you have an easy way of falling back to a pinned version that you know that you control everything in there, right?
Sure. Okay, let me make sure I understand this, because I think
Well,
that's an insight that I haven't come across before or haven't thought of. So obviously they announced the fact that essentially you can get your Lambda container, sorry, you can get your Docker container and run it in a Lambda function. And yes, and what you're
well, you can provide it to Lambda as
right,
the image that they should run
right,
as the Lambda execution environment, which I think is
right.
a useful difference, because
Yeah.
it's not that the container runs in Lambda, right? It's
Yes,
that
okay.
they're
Yeah.
already creating these snapshots that they were delivering based on your zip file and then their background image.
Yes.
And now you're just providing the whole image.
Yes, okay. Yes, so Lambda functions have always been running in containers. That's the truth of it, right? Okay, all right.
Well,
Well,
yeah, I
okay,
mean, Chris Munns would get mad about that it's not an actual container, um, there's the micro VM, the Firecracker, and all those kind of things.
okay.
But I think it's useful to talk about it just as the way in which you are delivering your code
Sure.
to to the service, rather than the way in which they run that code.
Yes. So what we're talking about here, then, from plain Lambda as we knew it to this announcement now, it's kind of like a spectrum of how you can deliver the configuration into that service. And
Yep.
obviously, and I think what you're saying then is this announcement has sort of pinned this end of the spectrum with, this is where you can come from. And you're kind of saying, well, yes, but how about we approach it from the other direction and say,
Let's split the
um,
difference,
yes, yes, yes. And that
and
that
then we've
makes a
got the
lot of
best of
sense.
both worlds.
Yes, yes, because as you say, like, as soon as you start to manage that entire container image, you are now having to deal with a whole bunch of stuff that the kind of the sort of the banner of serverless was taking you away from, which was not having to deal with versionings of libraries and execution environments and all the rest of it. It's giving you the ability to do that, but rather than saying, right, do it all, you're saying, well, yeah, come from the other direction. Specify that. Is it? Am I saying this right? Specify the container image that I want to use, and sort of have that sort of versioned in the background, and you can come in and say, well, I want to use this container. Here's my Lambda function.
Yeah, and I think the way that I understand it, as I've seen it defined by these, I don't remember what the container tooling is that does this rebase operation. I can't remember what it's called. Um, but the point being that you can bring a container and say, it uses this base image that you have provided, and then layers on top that I have provided. And
Right.
they're able to say, okay, well, because this base image matches our base image, we will update that base image, and we'll
Right.
take your top layers and put it on the new base layer.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, of course, that could break,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
again, that's the same thing with zip files, and people,
Absolutely.
vast, proportion of the users of zip files, it works great
Sure.
for. Uh, and so that's sort of the difference that we would have. What you don't get with the zip file is the ability to fall back to specifying the whole thing. But if you're
Yep.
doing the sort of container rebase operation and you've opted into that and something breaks, you do get, using the same packaging format, right, to go back and say, oh, go back to the exact one that I told you,
Sure.
because I know that works. And then you can start to figure out why the rebased version, something broke, right? Something in the base image was different, and then you can fix that. And now you can bring your new image that sits on the new base image, but then still say, keep updating it.
It gives you more
Because I
control.
think those breakages for most people in most situations are quite rare, that
Yeah.
something actually breaks when Lambda updates something underneath. They
Sure.
do happen and they are frustrating, but
Sure.
again, the answer to something breaks is not I should take full ownership over all of it, because often the answer there is more things break more often.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
Sometimes it is though. Sometimes, again, if you've got, very bespoke code that you're trying to get working, having full control over the environment, if you've got existing containers, all of these, it's a very useful thing to be able to bring the entire environment into there.
Yeah. Okay. So, and so millisecond billing
Yep.
is
I
that
don't think it matters that much.
I was going to say, does it make a huge amount of difference? It causes in a lot of interesting conversations, and like, oh well, let's make my functions much more efficient. But are you going to save much?
I mean, Lambda tends to be not the major cost driver, right? People tend to have saved money going to Lambda.
Mm.
I think there are people, and again, if you've got 50 millisecond functions and all your functions run at 50 milliseconds, your bill is going to be cut in half. If you're FINRA and you're running trillions of executions a month or whatever, and you're shaving 3 milliseconds of build time off of all of them, you're probably saving real money.
Yeah.
I think for the majority of people, it's not going to be worth it to think about.
Sure.
You're going to save some money, but people are going to try and optimize for cost primarily, right? If you weren't optimizing that for your user experience, right?
Right.
The cost
Yeah,
part of
sure.
it isn't going to be,
Yeah.
shouldn't be compelling you,
Yeah.
right? If shaving 30 milliseconds from 140 to 110, which didn't cost you anything different, was not worth it for your users, why is it worth it for your bill when the amount of money you're saving is going to be not huge? And you've now got an opportunity cost. The time that you're spending on that cost optimization is time that you're not shipping new features.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah, it's a scale
very
thing.
nice thing,
Mm.
right? Very nice thing that is going to save everyone a little bit of money, some people a lot of money, but is not, something that people should get caught up in. It should change how you're working.
Okay. Yep. Fair point. And so at the other end of the spectrum, obviously, and included with the container story is now 10 gig functions or 10 gig
Well, so there's
environment.
two different things there. There's the size that you can have for the amount of code that you deliver, which if you're using a container can be very large. But if you're using a zip file is unchanged.
Right. Yes. Yep.
And I think that's because it's stored in ECR. And frankly, the zip files get stored for free and the container images don't.
Sure.
So I understand, that Lambda's not going to let me store, 1 gigabyte zip files in it for no money.
Well, that would be an interesting hack, wouldn't it? Like you can see Corey setting up his next presentation, stores terabytes of data for free.
Yeah. Well, this is why, I wrote this blog recently about Code Artifact, that Code Artifact should sort of solve this for everyone on AWS in a standardized way. That's a separate thing. So separate from the image size, which is useful, right? People with big machine learning images aren't able to deliver those in, all those kind of things. NumPy, SciPy had to be delivered as layers, so that you can fit, you can optimize the size for that. But separate from that is now that the memory size and vCPU size is much bigger for both types. It doesn't matter how you deliver the code.
Right.
The execution environment can have a lot more resources. And I think that's great. I don't think, there's a lot of constraints in Lambda that I think should be kept, like the execution time, that I think we start to lose benefits of serverless as we try and accommodate more compute use cases in a single platform rather than sort of bifurcating or splitting into more platforms that are specialized to do certain things. But the amount of horsepower you can apply to a problem, always increase that.
Yeah, sure.
Of course, for a lot of things, if you're single threaded, right, and you're compute bound, you hit multiple cores at like 1.5 gigabytes memory size, and beyond that doesn't really help. If you are, of course, you get more I/O and CPU shares and those kind of things, right? Beyond that, but it's definitely one of those things where both, you want to figure out where your sweet spot is. It's not always intuitive, depending on what you're bound on, right? Increasing the amount of resources it has may bring down your execution time and keep your cost relatively flat. And this is what Lambda power tuning is. Right, there's that library to help you run a Lambda function at a number of different settings.
Okay.
And compare your execution time and your cost, right? And again, there's that thing of, okay, if I turn up my power a little bit more, it may cost me more, but I'm getting better performance, and that's good for my users, right? So it's not always just what's the lowest cost.
Yes.
But you want to see what the trade-off is across those different settings.
Yes. No, that's interesting. Is that I'm not sure I've come across this. Is this a sort of an open source library that you can throw configuration at?
Yeah.
It's not a console thing that I've missed.
Yeah. No, it's from Alex Castleboni.
Okay.
And it's on GitHub here.
Okay. I'll have to throw a link to this below.
Yeah.
That's what YouTubers say, right? I'll put a link to it below.
There we go. And yeah, so it's nice. It runs it a bunch of times and lets you see, sort of where, what that trade-off is.
Yeah, that's good. that's the old cloud mantra. What the question is, what's the best way of doing something? And the answer is, if you're in AWS, try all of them and see which one works the best.
It's true.
So,
yeah.
That's
Just
basically
run all of the instance types.
Yeah.
And see how it works. I think that would be good. Well, and this is one of the nice things, right? You don't actually have to try. If you think about trying to do this in EC2, you run into problems like that of, okay, great, there are 150 different instance types.
Yes.
Which one of these are appropriate for my application? And in Lambda, you get to say, all right, well, I get to turn this knob up and down.
Yeah.
And figure out where it is, and then move on, right? There's a paralysis of choice, or the opportunity to optimize the wrong thing, right? To focus on, I have a dial and I can make that dial go down, as opposed to, if I leave this dial where it is, what else can I do?
Yes, and so for many people running their environments, they don't have the scale issues that some of these things are trying to fix. And so your scale point is probably your team, and the time you're spending looking at this problem. Let's move on. Okay, so we're halfway through reInvent right now. I want to plant that into your head that we are halfway
this whole
through.
January thing is, I have very mixed feelings about it.
And so who knows what that's going to be. I mean, we have a bunch of things which haven't come out yet that I think we're all waiting for. I'm frankly.
You want to know something that's very fun?
Yes.
Is that in January is the talk about how iRobot is using Kubernetes. I would just tease that.
Okay. All righty. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to some stuff. There's some IoT stuff happening as well in January. I'm hearing people's sessions have basically been put into that section. So, I mean, whether it's going to be an entire theme around that, or whether they just literally ran out of time because of the amount of content they had, we'll have to wait and see. But just quickly, how do you feel when I say those words? We are basically halfway through. Do you
I mean, yeah, it's less exhausting than being at reInvent in person.
Yeah.
But it's certainly more drawn out.
Sure. So if there's anything in particular, is there anything on your wish list? Because I know you have a very extensive wish list. Is there anything on your wish list that you actually think you have a chance at getting between now and the end?
Sleep? Yeah,
okay. We'll go for that.
A little bit of rest.
Yes. All right. Fair enough. And look, I'm asking people as we're doing these chats to imagine where we are. So like we can be anywhere in virtual space. It can be real or fantasy, it could be anything. We've had various suggestions of places in London, and we've been in space already. And I think we've been at a ski resort as well now with these chats that I've been doing. Have you got anywhere you could nominate this virtual location that we are in right now? Any thoughts? I'm throwing it out there with no pre-warning. So
I mean, so I like to spend a lot of time in the woods. But I
okay.
like to spend a lot of time in the woods away from all of this kind of stuff.
Okay.
I would say, how about that a location where we are getting ice cream again?
Okay. Okay. Yes. Yes. And maybe not Vegas this time. Where's the
I
best
mean,
place?
ideally, it's not in Las Vegas.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a sort of suffix that you can put on anything. So
Yeah.
where's the best ice cream that you've had?
Let's go with Izzy's in St. Paul.
Okay. Alrighty. That's where we are. I like it.
All
And
right.
maybe one day we can actually do that in reality as well. So that'd be pretty cool.
There we
Thank you
go.
very much for your time, Ben. I really appreciate it. I know that I'm sure that a lot of people are trying to grab moments of your time. If people want to connect with you, though, in this
Yeah.
reInvent world that we're in, how's the best way to do that?
I mean, Twitter, definitely.
Yep.
Um,
Link you
and
below.
Yep. And I think, always reach out. I mean, part of the purpose that I go to reInvent, I mean, the entire purpose of going to reInvent for me is to talk to people.
Yep.
And talking to new people, talking to people I know, but spanning the range of people who are looking to understand more, to learn more, people who have things to teach me, right? So I'm that's the thing I'm missing most about this in this virtual reInvent.
Yep.
And so definitely, if you have questions about serverless, about IoT, about CloudFormation, about AWS SSO or other IAM related things, reach out. Happy to chat about all of it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ben. And I'll talk to you again soon.
Great. Talk to you soon.